our artist this afternoon, Rachel Papo. I'll give you a little brief introduction on her background, and then she will share with us the ins and outs of this show here. So Rachel was born in Columbus, Ohio, and raised in Israel. She began photographing as a teenager and attended a renowned fine arts high school in Haifa, Israel. At age 18, she served in the Israeli Air Force as a photographer. She earned a BFA in Fine Arts from Ohio State University and an MFA in photography from the School of Visual Arts in New York City. Rachel's photographs are included in numerous public and private collections and have been exhibited and published worldwide. She has been selected as a finalist for the Santa Fe Prize for Photography and awarded an NYFA Fellowship in 2006. In 2009, Rachel won a Lucy Award for Deeper Perspective Photographer of the Year. She lives with her husband and 2 children in Brooklyn, New York, and is working on personal projects and accepting commissions. So please join me in welcoming Rachel.
Thank you, everyone. First of all, thank you all for coming today. And before I start talking about anything, I want to thank the exhibition committee for selecting my work to show here. I've known about Blue Sky Gallery for many years throughout my photography career, and I tried to get my work shown here in the past, and this is the first time that they approached me, so I'm super grateful for that. I wanted to thank the staff, Harper, Molly, and Steve for their hospitality and for being so generous with the space and with me just hanging out here all day. And of course, to the installation volunteers. Krista is a representative here. They did such an amazing job, and it was a pleasure to watch, and my only complaint is that they did it too fast. And I didn't get that feeling of hard work of installing this show that took me months to put together and figure out how to. So, thank you. So I'm going to jump right into how this project came about. It started with postpartum depression when I was, the idea for the project came about after the second time I had it. And about 2 years after I recovered, I wanted to do something about it. And in the past, my projects have been more like based on my experience, but documenting portraiture of other people. So I have a project that was based on my military service in Israel, and it was portraits of female soldiers. And it was portraits, not too much text or no text. It was my MFA thesis project. And it was very easy for me in terms of, I didn't have to talk about myself really, I just felt something, and emotionally that motivated me to create. After that, I did a project about ballet dancers, also based on my childhood as a dancer, always struggling to succeed and be a good dancer. And then I went to Russia and I documented young ballet dancers. Again, I felt very strongly their feelings, and I was very compassionate, and that came through in the photos. Like you could feel what I felt through the images. My next project was Homeschooled, which was a little more removed from a personal experience, but it came about after I became a mother and had to make decisions about schooling and about how to raise children, and I lived in an environment where many people homeschooled their children. So again, I had the sensitivity about parenthood, but I documented someone else. Always with my eye and my vision, but never pointing the lens at something personal. So 2 years after I recovered from the second postpartum depression, I felt, okay, okay, this is a good opportunity to do something about this topic. But doing portraits of mothers with their babies is the last thing I wanted to do. There was no way for me to really express anything through that, and I couldn't think of a good way to do it with portraits of mothers. So I decided to do a project that is the complete opposite of that. Start with the complete opposite of that. And I started looking back at pictures that I took during the time that I was going through it, and it was hard for me, even till this day, if I look back at photos that I took on my phone, and it's all on my phone, it was nothing intentional. I remember every single moment of every photo that I took. And luckily, I never delete anything, so all my text messages from that period were on my phone with the date and the photos with the date. So I started matching the photos and looking at what I wrote at that moment when I took this photo, and so and then I thought, I wonder how many other mothers out there who went through this have what I have text messages and have pictures that they took. So that was initially the idea, and then I put an ad. I was living in Berlin at the time, and I was part of this Facebook group, and I put an ad up and in this expat mothers group, and I said, I'm looking for mothers who have gone through postpartum depression, and as someone, I don't remember exactly what I wrote, but as someone who's been through it twice, I know the shame and embarrassment and the struggle with revealing these emotions, and I'm looking to work collaboratively on this photo project. And a few mothers got in touch with me, very hesitant, but very willing and very confident. And I feel like they felt some kind of a relief that someone wants to listen to them and someone understand. So I started working with different mothers, and my idea was to record their stories and then photograph their stories in a way that is respectful, yet I guess illuminating of what they were going through. And for me, I have certain things that I look at, that I listen to, that I smell, that still reminds me of that time. And I wanted to know if they had the same thing, if they had certain objects that they can't even look at, or certain songs that they hear, or certain things that remind them that are still painful. And yeah, they had a lot of things, and that sort of started. So this exhibition evolved, and instead of, it started as like each of these clusters would have been one mother. It would have been Miriam and all her objects and all her text, and Vicky and all her objects and all her text, and Lisha and all her objects and all her text. But it didn't feel right to me. And the reason it didn't feel right is because when I was selecting the quotes to take out of each interview, I felt like I was leaving things behind. And I felt like, I want to take this quote by Alicia and this quote by Naomi and this quote by Joanne, but they have so much more things to say. And if I already put this quote by Joanne, I can't put almost the exact same quote by Anita. And then I started realizing that maybe it's a good thing that they're all repeating the same information. and echoing exactly what I was going through. So I started creating this puzzle, and I printed all the quotes out on little cards and all the photos, and I made this big magnet board in my room, and I started like moving them around, and all of a sudden I had a cluster with, all the mothers saying, repeating the same thing. And I thought, this is pretty amazing. It's almost like word by word. And I started putting together these clusters of quotes, and they all fell under a certain theme, and they all followed what I went through in different ways. So if I would have recorded, or if anyone interviewed me, my quote would be at the bottom of this, of each of these clusters. So that's how I decided to create this exhibition, and it was part of the work that I was preparing for the book that will come out next year of this project. So it was kind of like a work that I did for the book, but it very much helped the exhibition, and now the exhibition will help the book. So, and the idea was to have my text messages as the thread that goes throughout the project. And here there's just a few representatives. And then bring the mother's information to somehow fill in between. So, technically, this is the beginning, and then you go in a circle like that. But, I think I see a lot of people started from this side, and I think it works just the same. And then some photos are mine that I shot with my phone when I was in the midst of my depression, and some I shot later to illustrate my memories of the depression. And if I had gaps of images of things that I remember, I photographed those. And I tried to photograph, I was still living in Berlin at the time, I tried to photograph them around the same season, and so everything was really still very painful, even 2 years later. Even now, there's certain songs, certain things that are still hard for me to listen to. And the mothers, they all took part, and they shared things, and we sort of worked together, and they were really wonderful. Like they really wanted to let it all out and have me sort of kind of exhibit their emotions or their pain. And most of them, if not all of them, haven't really seen this come together. I'm in touch with them, but they don't really know. And I think, I hope they're happy with it. I wanted to ask you to interfere and ask and say something that you're curious about. I think I said most of what I had to say. And when you ask things, I'll probably have more to say. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about why the themes go this way in order? Like what made the decisions to have a continuity like that?
Mm-hmm. So, if I remember what happened to me, that text message with my brother is pretty much the beginning. And I look at the date, and that photo was taken pretty much around the same week. And it was when I thought I was okay. It was already 2 months after my son was born, and I thought, I think I'm okay, but then I started feeling a little off. And I turned to my brother, who was like my best friend, and I wanted him to comfort me and just, to calm me down. And so this is where I expressed the beginning of the way down. And then, so I think maybe in the book it'll be a little bit different, the order, and then I moved into the insomnia, or this kind of like anxiety, and yeah, it was like all of a sudden there was all this fear and anxiety and unreasonable fear of things that are really simple. And I found within the mother's stories, I found things that echoed mine. And I think we're going into, and then we're missing a few that are going to be in the book, but not in here. And this was kind of like when the depression really sinks in, and you are just kind of numb, and that's the first word of this one, is numb. And that's part of how you feel. You're just kind of paralyzed, and you can't really, you have no interest in doing anything. What do we have? And on the failure, the mother starts blaming herself for not being an adequate mother and not trying hard enough, and it's all my fault, if only I did this better, if only I tried harder, if only I breastfed more. So that was repeated sentiment with the mothers. Then the people not knowing. So mothers are trying so hard to hide it, and not only from friends and people on the street, but within their own family. And that was, I mean, I'm not a person that hides emotions, so I was like all in the open, but a lot of these mothers were just, the husband, for example, knew, but just told her, pretend that everything is okay, or, and then resentment, that was a strong one, that a lot of mothers were shocked that they felt resentment toward their baby, and intrusive thoughts of harming their child, and they couldn't control it. So that was also a repeated theme, or not wanting, regretting motherhood, regretting becoming a mother, and then the last one I have in this exhibition is the stereotypes. It is the mothers reflecting on they're aware that there are stereotypes of motherhood in society, and even though they know that there are these stereotypes of motherhood being this perfect, beautiful, fluffy thing, they can't avoid it. They can't avoid being affected by it and feeling like they're doing something wrong, or they're not doing something good enough. Some other themes that I have are identity, and mothers realizing that their identity is completely changed overnight, and they're now not just a woman, but they're a mother, and which one is the real me, and that's also a pretty common thing that mothers struggle with. So, and there's a few others. There was one on breastfeeding that everyone was obsessed. They were obsessed about it, and because there was so much pressure to do it right, to do it only breastfeeding, and so you take all these things and you pile them on a mother who hasn't slept for days and has to take care of a baby, and it crushes her very, very strongly. And together with the imagery, I try to fit them according to the theme, sort of. But the idea is that as a viewer, the image will trigger an emotion, will trigger a thought, and will make you wonder and think about this topic in a different way, and not the usual way that people hear about it.
You were saying that certain songs or objects don't have really charged connotation to them. I guess I have two questions. Is through working on this project, has certain things or memories or I guess your perspectives on things changed or shifted or ease, I guess, yes, in being able to talk to other people about it or share it. And then my second question on top of that is the response from people, from mothers who have had a similar experience or people who possibly have no idea how has that been to navigate.
You're talking about mothers who approached me and said I went through the same thing? Or?
Yeah, viewers who are also mothers, like how have you noticed the impact of this work on them? And then people who don't know anything about this experience.
I haven't had too much experience like that because the project hasn't been very publicly out there yet. But as I was working on it, and I moved to Brooklyn and I met new people, and it was pretty incredible how many of my friends were like, yeah, I had it too, yeah, I had it too. And then I thought, okay, maybe they don't really mean it. Maybe they were just, were depressed a little bit, and then a few of them I sat down and interviewed, and it's incredible, and they start crying when they talk to me years later. So it's a lot of people keep it inside, and the pain I don't think it goes away. This gives me strength and empowerment, but it doesn't erase what I had. And the question is what can we do about it? How can we ease the pain when it's happening instead of looking back and saying, if only. Yeah.
Now, I have two questions. How did you find the mothers to interview, and why did you choose to not title the photos?
To not take photos of them? Or what? Title the photos. So the mothers, I put an ad on Facebook, is that what you're asking? And each one wrote me back, and it was a process of emailing back and forth, and then going to their house and spending time with them, and then sometimes coming back and conducting the interview and then taking pictures. I had, with the titles, I've been going back and forth. I had titles like Anita's diary, or Alicia's text message, or Vicky's kitchen drawer. And I don't know, I felt it doesn't matter. I felt I wanted to keep more of a mystery, and Yeah, I'm still thinking what to do with titles, but at the end, I liked it kind of anonymous. And I didn't want people to say, oh, Alicia, she's troubled because she has this and this and that. I wanted to keep it more organic in a way, and then kind of like mysterious, and have the viewer wonder if it's my text message, if it's someone else's, and does it really matter? Because in the end, we're all saying the same thing, and I represent it.
So who do you hope will see this work?
I want men to see it more, because I feel in our society, I feel men and people who don't have children, they hear postpartum depression, and I admit before I had children, I heard about it, and it's just a problem of the mother, of a new mother, and what can you do? It's just, she'll deal with it, she'll get over it, and it's such a common phenomenon. I mean, I read this morning, it's between 1 in 10 women or 1 in 5 women who actually have postpartum depression, not just baby blues or moody, So wherever you look, someone experienced it, and they didn't tell you, and they didn't talk about it. And I want people to understand that this is everyone's problem, not just the mothers, and this should be in the news, just like other universal global things are in the news. And I mean, I'm not saying that this project is going to change the world, but it's just another thing to get it out there, and the more the better. And I mean, the hope I got this past week is that when my 89-year-old father finally seemed to have looked at this project after all these years that I've been working on it, and he's known about it, and he's a pretty conservative, kind of old man, and he started reading some of the text, and he was horrified, and he had this like kind of urgency to tell me do you have to have people see it, and people have to know about it, and that was like, wow, if I got through to my father, then yeah, there was a little hope.
I noticed in this show, the room, is that the original kernel of the idea of it was to be in a book format, is this right?
To be
a book format?
Yes.
And so were the pictures taken for that purpose originally, and then sequenced in a page book form, and then from that did you have what you would have to do it again? You would have to do another editing process. So and both of these shows have that in common. And it's interesting that there's like 2 ways of presenting the same work, 2 ways that you make, and then 2 ways that we can experience it. So could you speak to that from this is sort of a gallery critical perspective, just having this 2-tiered form of expression, and then what are the differences that you notice when you have a show here that's so open? There's an openness about this, and a random sense of sequence as opposed to the paper printing. So student?
Yeah, that's such a good question because, the gentleman was asking about the comparison of a book format where the sequence is set and you have to start from here to here versus a space like this, and what is the difference and what are the benefits of one versus the other. So when I conceived this project, I immediately thought about a book. So right from the start, I was collecting material that I knew would be in a book. That's why I saved little notes and then I asked the mothers for papers and I never thought how it would look on a wall. And let alone to try and submit the work to competitions or to apply for grants. There was no way for me to present this work. And that's why it never worked. Like all these years I tried to submit it to things and it was never accepted. So, and I thought the text had such an important part in this. And I felt like the photos cannot stand alone. Like just have, if you took down all the little frames and just had the large ones, it would be visually a little pleasing, but maybe you wouldn't get the same idea. So it was very difficult to think about it as an exhibition and to switch between the book, and I still don't know how the book is going to be constructed. This helped me, and hearing feedback from people helped me see how people view it, and I'm curious to see how the book will look, and I had to seek a very experienced designer who works a lot of text and image, and I want to see how he will kind of, what the marriage of all these elements will bring about. And I will definitely send him the documentation of this exhibition, but it could take another form. So it's interesting that the exhibition came before the book, and I think, I don't know if the next exhibition will look the same. Next time I show this work, it might be influenced by the book or not.
Just a little follow-up. Do you think that a gallery then is the ultimate, ignorance if it exists, the ultimate exhibition for a photograph that is the primary way that a photograph should be seen?
Versus a book?
And that everything else is something else, but that there's something about a gallery exhibition in person on paper that is the best that photography can be. That's the premise they wanted to.
Versus a book or versus?
Yeah, let's say just this kind of presentation on the walls in front.
Well, this is temporary. So you're going to see this, and if you weren't in town this month, then it's gone. A book will be there, and for me, having a book is the ultimate destination, and the exhibition is just a way to get the public to see it. I mean, people who maybe that you did not expect to see it, and it's interesting, and to see how people respond to it. With a book, it's a different story. People have to buy the book. People have to be into photography books, or people have to open it and actually read it. And a space like this, it's more of a fluid experience, and you can look at whatever you want, and you don't need to touch anything. You can just look at one part and leave. And so I think both are important, and both are an experience that is important for the project.
Oh, thank you. That's yeah.
Yes.
I'm curious about your interviews. Were they always intended to be fragmented as part of the project, or are you interested in, like, I guess in the book publishing, like them in full?
I love the fragmentation. I think it's much easier to read. I thought about myself when I read an article and I read a full interview. I get tired after a while, and this is a lot more palatable, and it makes people, you can skip one and then come back, and and I feel in the book it's going to be like kind of like a mystery, like it'll be, I like the fragmentation. I didn't really plan even in the beginning, to have the whole interview. I was going to just extract certain quotes, but in this way I almost have, well, not the full interview, but a much bigger part of the interview than I expected, than I thought I would have. So, yeah, I think you will see when the book is out. I think you'll be a lot more.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because things can, if you're doing a full interview with someone and you're only choosing a couple of quotes from them, some things can be taken out of context. I'm just curious, like, if that was all presented ahead of time, if that was your plan, or if it evolved to be that, so that you could make it a more universal idea of postpartum depression.
Yeah, this all evolved only in the past year. And I forgot in the beginning to thank COVID for that, because this exhibition was supposed to be up July 2020, and I have no idea what you would have seen then. So that kind of time really was important to make this, to develop this. Yes?
I'm interested in going back to your choice of this as a subject for the exhibition. It's always, as a photographer, when you choose, you know, you're making a commitment to years. 1 year, 4 years, 5 years, to live with it. And I'm asking, what was it like for you to make a commitment to go back into something so painful? And do you remember when you finally said, I'm going to do it?
I remember the beginning. So the question was, how did it feel to relive all this over a period of, I would say, 6 years now since I started? There were times when I wanted to throw it out the window, but I knew, and there were times when I thought it would never get to be on a wall or never get to be a book, and that was bothering me. I can't wait really to move on, but I knew it had to be done. And the first, while I was interviewing the women, it was hard. To have someone tell their story and cry, but I felt like I was on a mission, and because I was already healthy and I felt very confident, and when I'm confident, and I have this kind of energy that you wouldn't be able to imagine me as someone who is weak and helpless. So I felt it was legit for me to talk to these mothers and tell them, come on, you're gonna be okay, tell me, and then I was supportive of them, but I also gave them hope, I felt. And then they were hopeful that with my story, they will one day help someone else, just like I am helping them. So So that was what kept me going while I was interviewing, while I was photographing. But I remember we were in Berlin and I would have the car and I would go and I would come back in the evening and be like, ugh. I would just kind of collapse. And then to listen to the interview, I transcribed each and every word of these interviews. Like I never used any service. I re-listened to them over and over and over again. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't always fun. And then transcribing meant that I had to listen to myself reacting to what they were saying. So I would have to listen to my stories over and over again, and that was a pain because I didn't want to listen to my things again, and I already knew what I would say. And so, yeah, that was something I had to get through, and I think I'm finally done. Because this past summer I had to re-listen to a lot of it, and also I was telling someone that I wasn't using the word postpartum depression at first. I couldn't say it. It was embarrassing me. I mean, I still don't like that term because it's not about depression, it's about so much more. And the word depression is depressing me. So there's anxiety, there's sleep deprivation, there's fear, there's so many other issues. So it took me a while to say it. I would say it kind of with all these little hints. It's my mother's project, I would call it, or the women's project, or the PPD project, just not say it. So I think I'm getting better with that. Yeah.
Okay, two questions. The one, I'm curious what, the ongoing response to the women, from the women's families, and if you have feedback from, the general community of the women, and how did you decide to lay this out spatially? I don't know if it's spatially, but I'm curious, the feedback you got.
So it depends on the mother. I had this idea at some point during the project to interview family members and kind of bring people from the outside to see what the relationship is and the dynamic between them. And I mean, that opened up a whole new thing, and I eventually let go of that idea. I didn't know what I would get from it, so I did speak with some dads and I did speak with some husbands, but I found that it's not, I don't know, it didn't really contribute anything. I mean, it's enough that I spoke to my parents and they still were not getting it, so I didn't see the point in it. And then you're asking me about the arrangement. I wanted to do these, the cluster of the quotes developed over the summer, and I think I just wanted to keep it as these clusters and have it less of a rigid arrangement like a book, but more kind of like a spatial thing and more intuitive. Yes?
Has the project changed you?
Changed me. Interesting. It made me a little more kind of like an advocate for something that I mean, I care about this, I'm looking forward to seeing what it will bring and how I can continue. On that level, it has. It changed me from being like the victim of this illness to being someone who overturns that and unvictimizing these women who are just see themselves as that way.
So you mentioned in the beginning how this was a different type of project that involved yourself and your emotions and your experience. Do you see yourself continuing in that way with your projects?
Always.
Putting yourself more into, rather than sort of the observer or the document?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I'm running out of topics, but, hopefully something will come up that is, I mean, if not directly documenting an experience from my life, then something that means a lot to me that I can somehow be part of it. But I really love the text and the different, I really love doing work that's not just photos. And for me, it's so much richer and so much more, there's so many possibilities. And it's a lot more, you can do a lot more with it. It's more interesting.
Do you mean that the text is fully separate from the photo? It isn't about the photo, it's about something else and in that type of way? Is that what you mean?
That text is an inseparable part of the project. So a lot of times you'll open a photo book and there'll be the photos and then there'll be a body of text at the end. And there's a lot more photo books now coming out where it's like this. And there's all these surprises and the text is just as important. And I love it. I mean, personally, I'm a lot more attracted to those types of books than just photo books. And I have so many photo books at home that are just photos and just text that accompanies them. And and I think it's a lot more artists now are doing work like this, and I encourage that because it gives it a lot more depth.
Thanks.
Yeah?
Any more questions?
I want to ask you if you want to write a little note in the book, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you want to be notified when the book comes out, please add your email address if I don't have it already, or just say hi.
And I will say too, we have examples of Rachel's other publications. There's one in the library, I think there's one in the back.
And one in the back,
Yeah,
yeah.
if you want to see the art project, right, and homeschool project.
Yeah.
So. All right, thank you so much.